Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Today's webinar is sponsored by Manifest Law, and my guest for today is Attorney Zahina. She's based in Los Angeles. We are going to be talking about H1B alternatives. There's going to be a set of slides that you learn from that. Then you have multiple options and multiple ways to ask questions. Option one is through the Q&A option. You can type in your questions. And option two is you can raise your hand and request to speak. I will give access just for your microphone, not your video. So you'll be able to speak up and ask your questions. And this meeting is recorded and also live streamed. So any questions that you want to ask, try to keep it short. And if it's going to be really lengthy questions, it's hard for us to read and respond to it. But we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. Hello, Attorney Zahina. Welcome, and looking forward for speaking with you for the next hour or so.
Hi everyone, my name is Zahina, and thanks for the warm introduction and for spending the evening with me tonight. I know it's probably more fun to be watching Netflix, but I appreciate you hanging with me instead. So today we're going to go into H-1B alternatives, and we have a presentation for you. I want to go into some more details on certain visas like the O-1, but if I'm because it's so detailed, and if I'm not able to go into as much detail because of time permission, we can also, by show of hands at the very end, you can also say like, hey, can we go back and talk a little bit more? As part of the Q&A, we can revisit some of the slides and the subjects, but there is so much alternatives and so much to cover that I really want to go into as much detail as possible, but let me know if I seem to be skipping over something or not giving enough detail. I'm happy to, like I said, try to revisit it during the Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started. I am an attorney here at Manifest Law. I've been working with Manifest since actually basically its conception. So we are a newer law firm, but we do have a really unique style and features that most law firms, I think, don't really have. So we are a very tech-focused law firm. But to get started, one of the things that makes us stand out is our approval rating. We have an approximately 96% approval rating. We really focus on talent visas. So a lot of people in this room, honestly, are probably on the path to qualifying for one of them. Those things being like O-1s, EB-1As, and EB-2NIWs. We have a very, very strict criteria for allowing attorneys to come in and join the Manifest group. We have approximately 1% acceptance rate. So we get tons and tons of resumes, but unfortunately, only a few actually make it in to be part of our cohort and organization. We have very, very amazing and reasonable payment plan options, money back guarantee options that really makes us stand out. A lot of law firms don't have payment plans. A lot of law firms don't have money back guarantee, and that's something really rare that we do offer here at Manifest. Lastly, one of the things that we have is that we have a lot of evidence support coaching opportunities. This isn't available, unfortunately, to every single person, but for those who come in who have the right profile and need some refinement, we do offer evidence support coaching for those who need that more specific tailoring experience. So what to expect today? We're going to talk about what the H-1B is, and essentially, if you didn't get chosen, what to do. So as you know, the H-1B is a visa that is available for those with specialized occupations, so individuals with a bachelor's degree or jobs that require a specific bachelor's degree, and those who are enrolling in the lottery. So if you weren't chosen in the lottery, what to expect? We don't think a second lottery round is likely. Unfortunately, it's just it's the trend. It's not trending towards having much more visa availability. So we want to make sure that you understand that there are other options. We're going to go into a little bit more of a deeper dive on O-1 visa eligibility and other viable alternatives. Like I mentioned, there's so many of them, and if I'm not going into enough detail for you, ping us in the Q&A. At the end of this presentation, we will go ahead and discuss all your questions and answers the best that time will permit. So again, my name's Zahina. I have approximately 13 years experience coming up this next month. On my experience, I've for years counting, I've done more than 4,800 cases. I really passionate about immigration law, care a lot about immigrants, come from an immigrant family background myself. So it is more of a personal passion project than just a job to me. So let's go ahead and talk about different types of H-1B alternatives. So to start, we're going to go into the O-1s, O-1B visas. This is the extraordinary ability visa. We'll talk about Cap-Exempt H-1B. So that's when you don't have to actually be in a lottery to get these positions. And they're amazing. They allow for you to work ASAP. You don't have to worry about that October start date, but you do have to work for university, nonprofit, for example. We'll talk a little bit about CPT-enabled degree programs, and then country-specific visas, which some of you may qualify for, but if it's not on the table for you, then of course, focus on the top 3. So let's go towards the O-1. What is the O-1? The O-1 is one of my specialties and favorite visas because it does allow for a lot of room for growth. So I'll meet people who are in college and they are really talented, but their resumes are not tailored to what the O-1 requirements are. Those things are not out of the question. You can make that resume fit the O-1 requirement and also benefit your career in the process. So things like trying to do hackathon judgeships, things like publishing scholarly articles, getting profiles on yourself in the media, aiming for that job that pays that lucrative amount that you could argue is one of the O-1 criteria. There are a lot of ways that you can start building up your resume, your background to meet the O-1 requirements. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. But keeping in mind, the O-1 is valid for 3 years. It can be extended in 1-year increments, but I know a clever attorney can make it 3. Basically, clever attorney, if they're permitted with the petitioner, who allows for a change in the job scope, can make it a 3-year renewal. But that's not always on the table, unfortunately. So the good thing about the O-1 is you can extend it forever. So you can renew until you're dead. Unlike the H-1B, unless you have an I-140 approval, you're limited at 6 years. So again, there's no maximum limit, there's no lottery, and it does open paths to other opportunities and potentially can create the foundation for the requirements of an EB-1A green card. Oops. So let's talk about what the O-1 eligibility requirements are. There are 2 types of O-1s, and I'm going to focus more on the O-1A quickly, simply because it is just a little bit more tailored to those who are attending the call today. O-1B is for people who are typically in the arts. So these are creatives, actors, people who are in, influencers. They typically will fall under the O-1B category. But for O-1A, we want to hit at least 3 of that following 8 criteria. So the first being receipt of nationally or internationally recognized awards. Those awards, typically you don't want them to be student awards, school awards. They shouldn't be just your local jurisdiction, local county awards, again, nationally, internationally recognized. This is a very broad type of category to argue, because I have clients who come in all the time and they show me an award that they got and I've never heard of it before. But then I look at the criteria, I'm like, oh, actually, there's a really great argument here. Or maybe I see a fellowship or a grant that they got, and then we tailor it to meet this argument. So don't shut down, be like, oh, I've never gotten a big award. You might have something that you don't realize could actually fit into this argument here. 2 is memberships. Memberships is any association that requires outstanding achievements to join. So for example, I have clients who come to me and they're like, oh, I'm a member of the State Bar of California, like myself. And I think that it was an outstanding achievement to become a lawyer, but it's not, according to USCIS. What are things like IEEE Fellowship, Forbes Tech or Forbes Business Council. You can also reference perhaps a notable advisory board position at a large organization. Those types of things typically will count. It's an evolving category, unfortunately. So IEEE senior membership used to qualify. It doesn't anymore. Now it's fellowship. O1's a little looser. That perhaps you can make arguments in places that wouldn't work for EB-1A. The criteria, so EB-1A being the green card, the criteria here is not totally fixed. There is, unfortunately, human error that always has the biases and adjudication standards that apply to every case. So always consult with an attorney when you're like, does this work? And what do you think? Have you seen it work in some cases? And they can tell you truthfully, this probably has a 50% chance of flying. Press, this is not as fluid, I think, as awards and membership. It's either you have press or you don't. It's very objective and clean cut, which makes it good and easy to aim for too. So for press, I tell clients, like, if you're in a position in your career where you're about to launch something, or you're pivoting yourself to be in a leadership position for an organization that's about to get a lot of funding, get yourself some press, get yourself a good PR person. I always recommend Global Talent PR because they are focused on organic press. You do not want to be working with someone that's getting you any paid publications. And there are a lot of predatory PR people out there. So be very mindful. They charge a lot of money and then we won't be able to use the press. So you shouldn't be paying the publications anything, but you should be paying a good PR person if you're in a position to build this area, something in order to get you the interviews, get you the features in the right, typically trade publications. Major media, a little harder to get, but aim for trade publications, more accessible, and you'd be surprised. There's a lot of them out there, oftentimes for almost every industry. The other criteria that I like, that I think similarly to press is not as fluid, is judgeships, which again is good. It's like you know what to aim for and you know how to qualify for it. Sometimes my clients come to me with a membership or an award and we really don't know whether it's going to get accepted or not. Press and judgeships, we're almost 100% sure the government will accept it or not. For judgeships, for those who are in engineering positions, have the ability to do hackathon judgeships, do it. You can aim for approximately 8 judgeships to meet this criteria. Excuse me. Judgeships are a great way to really build something that's very objective, to be a solid prong in your O1 and eventually an EB-1A green card case. Aim for about 8 individual judgeships. Don't judge students. Don't judge anything that's too much on a local level. You really want to be aiming for a national level contest that's open for everyone and industry professionals. Doing peer review also qualifies for judgeships. So that's something I have happen to me almost every day. I meet someone that's really established, has a great resume. They're like, oh, I've been invited to peer review like 6 times. I always said no. Start saying yes. That's a great opportunity. I know it's easy for me to say because obviously I'm not the one doing it. It's a lot of work to do peer review, but it is a really great opportunity to build up your case. Original contributions, and I'm going to jump to number 7 as well. Lead critical role, distinguished organizations, are my 2 least favorite criteria, argue, because they are very, very subjective. And when you're dealing with the Trump administration, they are going to look at the word original and lead and critical and say, are they really original? Are they really, and how do you prove that, right? It's really hard to prove these 2 criteria objectively unless you have some good press, unless you have some good citation ratings, unless you have a patent that you can prove usage. These things will truly typically rely on letters of recommendation, which this administration typically will treat like your mom wrote it. They just look at letters of recommendation. They're like, yeah, so what? The CEO thinks you're leading critical at this company. We want to see some internal reports or meeting notes or some media. What do you have additional? So these things are harder to prove. You will typically be limited to your letters of rec, which oftentimes is enough, but you will oftentimes also see RFPs on it. Just make sure you're massaging those relationships now to get those strong letters of recommendations in the future. So keep taking out your old professor for coffee and be friends with your boss, because those people are great people to eventually sign for these 2 criteria. Jumping back to number 6, authorship of scholarly articles. Again, one of my more favorite, less fluid types of requirements. So if you meet the authorship articles, either you do or you don't, right? Are you publishing in reputable journals? Avoid any kind of journals that don't have a strict editorial board. Aim for Q1, Q2 journals. Open source journals are not necessarily bad, but they do tend to get a lot of pushbacks and RFPs, and you're going to have the burden of proving to the government that these journals are good enough. and prestigious enough to accept your work and qualify scholarly. When you're publishing with Q1, Q2 journals, you don't have that burden typically. Last requirement, high remuneration and salary. So if you have a gig job and you got paid on a contract basis at a rate that puts you in the top 10% earners for your geographic area, we can use that. If you have an annual salary that puts you in top 10% of your job description for your geographic area, we can use that. So this super objective. My favorite criteria traditionally to argue, keep in mind they are pushing back now and not accepting RSUs, any kind of stocks, but they do accept your salary and your bonus. And that, if you're in a good position, is a very great objective criteria for the O1. As you can see for the O-1B, the differences really are carved out for people who are in the creative industry. So you're obviously going to be able to show selling tickets as one of the types of commercial success for your O-1B, or if you have any kind of recognition from like media sources. And O-1Bs also require for what we call like an advisory opinion letter from organizations such as, if you're an actor, you'll have to have SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, write you a letter. Those things are not required for the O1. So it's slightly different. They're typically adjudicated what a lot of people believe to be a more deferential standard, but the requirements are slightly different. We won't go into too much detail here. If you are in an O-1B position, ping that in the chat. That could be one of the things maybe we can discuss during Q&A in a little bit more detail.
Sure. So before we go to the next one, I wanted to make sure the audience here get the context. Or if you can briefly explain, let's say someone is on OPT and they're going to run out of time on H1. Is this something that they can start now and try to get O1 approved before the next year's lottery?
Definitely. So for building an O1, you can start it today, and hopefully a lot of my clients who don't have any criteria met can build over the span of a year to qualify within a year. So be mindful of your OPT period, when your expiration is. Be mindful of how low the acceptance rating is for the H1B lottery. So just have a backup plan.
Okay, got it. All right. And how many of those criterias do they have to meet? Do they have to meet 3 or more is better? How would someone pick? I'm going to focus these few criterias.
So that's actually what my next slide is on the 3 criterias and the final totality determination standards. So you do have to meet 3 criteria, but on top of that, you do have to also meet totality determination standard, which is proving to the government that you are in the top of your field. So yes, I've done a ton of judgeships. Yes, I have a lot of publications. Yes, I'm paid a lot of money, 3 criteria, but are you still able to argue that you have a sustained claim to be the top of your field, right? So whether you're in the top of the field of your arts or in the top of the field of engineering, how do you prove that? Well, you can also throw in extra credit evidence here to make that totality determination standard after arguing your 3 criteria. Those things are like presenting at a conference, being invited to a popular podcast, perhaps being a commencement speaker at your school, which one of my clients did, hosting a workshop at a notable university. All of that extra credit evidence goes into that last requirement.
Okay, got it. Could you, I think looking at a couple of questions, I'm thinking, can you explain the difference between what is an O1, how is it different from H1, and how is it different from EB1?
Yes. So O1 and H1s are both non-immigrant visas. They are working visas that allow you to be here in the United States and work, but they do not give you any permanent status. So they have expiration dates on them. The EB-1A is a green card. So you are a permanent resident. Your card itself can expire, but no one can take away your permanent residency besides an immigration judge. So essentially, you have a permanent home in the US and eventually a path to citizenship with the EB-1A. That's not true for the H-1B and the O-1.
Okay, so O1 is a replacement for H1. If somebody is not getting in the lottery, then O1 will allow them to stay beyond their OPT period expired.
Correct, correct.
Okay, got it. All right. Yeah, please continue, attorney.
Great. So here's some of the things that you could start doing for the O1. Again, I had mentioned previously having strategic press to build your PR could be a really great way to have that objective criteria met for media. Niche media, so trade journals are okay, got to have a compelling story. Work again with a good PR company, global talent PRs, who I usually recommend, focus on organic press. Judgeships, traditional versus modern judging, peer review. You can ask your professors, like, hey, do I have the opportunity to do some peer review for some journals that you're associated with? Networking is a great way to get peer review positions. Judging regular competitions, like that's open to the public, like, hey, here's a engineering hackathon that we are hosting at the local Y accelerator, event, right? If you're given that opportunity to judge these individual professionals, do it. Make sure it's a traditional competition that's open to national, international levels. Always focus on judging professionals over students. The next one of the things that you could start doing too is the scholarly publication. Again, your school is a great resource here. Talk to your professors. Make sure you also focus on not just closing out to regular academic journals, but trade publications work too. PR firms are a great place to really position and use this as well.
Okay. What's the role of manifest law if somewhere to approach your firm for O1 visa processing? Can you help them to identify if they are able to get O1 visa?
Yeah, so basically, whenever someone's interested in seeing if they qualify for an O1, we send them a questionnaire. They fill out the questionnaire. We do an assessment. If you have a potentially viable case, we push it for a free attorney consultation, where if you're maybe on the fence, when you're not qualified just yet, the attorney can tell you, like, hey, let's do a portfolio building case. Let's stay on board for 6 months, 1 year, however long it takes to get you in the position to apply for the O1. Or if your case is qualified as is, then of course your attorney will go ahead and facilitate filing that for you ASAP.
Okay, all right, fantastic. And for the listeners who are in the Zoom session, I'm posting a link on the chat that gets you to a quiz. And you can enter the details on the quiz that will help to evaluate, and somebody from Manifest Law's team will review your quiz answers, and then they will get back to you to schedule a free consulting call to explore the possibilities. So please check your chat. So let's talk about Cap-Exempt H-1B.
So going back, so as we started the call, these are all alternatives for the traditional H-1B, right? So when you're not accepted in the H-1B lottery, what can you do? The first was the deep dive into O1. Now let's go back to the H-1B again. Cap-exempt H-1Bs are still H-1Bs, but it's just your petitioner falls into the cap-exempt category. So the good thing to remember is that there are a lot of these organizations out there. You just have to look for them. Universities qualify, working for a government research organization qualifies, a nonprofit research institution qualifies, a nonprofit organization with a formal affiliation with the university qualifies. So think Langone. There's no lottery needed. So basically, if you get that job offer tomorrow, you can start working ASAP. You don't got to wait for the October start date. And it can give you the ability to file concurrent full-time role with a private employer without needing the lottery later. So for example, if you have a concurrent job with a private employer, you can also do the concurrent role.
Could you explain a little bit more about the concurrent role and how does that help?
So basically, it buys you time to get that lottery number picked in the future for your H-1B with the private employer.
Okay,
So you
all
can
right.
be here in the meanwhile.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
So another alternative is the CPT-eligible graduate program. These always tell clients you really want to make sure you're having a good relationship with your DSO to understand if you even qualify, right? A lot of schools don't offer it, but those that do have a ton of benefits. So what that means is that you basically can work under what we call the CPT program. That's the curricular practical training that allows you to work off campus during within an eligible program. So most oftentimes these are graduate level school programs. If OPT is no longer available to you, enrolling in a CPT program might allow you to stay in and work in the US while staying F1 status. But I always tell clients, talk to your DSO. They're going to be the one to look at your OPT records, your school records, and tell you whether that's going to fly or not. DSOs are the agents that are authorized through the Department of Homeland Security. You guys may or may not know this if you're on F1 status, who's the representative at the school that basically coaches you through, excuse me, coaches you through the process of getting your OPT authorized, you're getting your I-20s signed. So again, do your research. Some programs offer immediate CPT, others do ask you to wait one academic year, so finishing your 1 year of schooling first. So one of the other H-1B alternatives is the country-specific ones. I'm going to go into these with a little bit less detail, but if you are falling into these categories, so you're Australian national, Canadian, or Mexican, ping us in the chat. We can address this a little further during the Q&A. But there are the E3s and the TNs. The E3s are for Australians who are also similarly to H-1Bs in specialty occupations. They tend to be more flexible because, frankly, the consulate's not very strict when they adjudicate these, and you can even do the E3 without having a bachelor's degree necessarily. You can use your work background, so 3 years of work to 1 year of college to qualify and be leveraged as a bachelor's degree. The TN visa is really great, but it does have a lot of limitations because there's a list of NAFTA designated professionals that says these are the jobs that are allowed to work here for Canadians and Mexicans under these professionals. So those things are like computer system analyst, engineer, mathematician, biologist, chemist, statistician, lawyer, for example. Their list is pretty long, but oftentimes I have clients who come to me and they're absolutely brilliant and they just cannot fit into a category. So you might need some creative leveraging there if it's possible, or you might really be stuck and have to pivot to another visa like an O-1. The great thing about the TN for Canadians is not true for Mexicans. You can apply directly at the border with very streamlined procedures. For Mexicans, TNs, they do have to apply with USCIS first, take their approval to the consulate. Similarly, we can talk about, and there's another category actually that wasn't here for country specific, and it's for Chileans and Singaporeans. It's called the H1B1. If that applies to you, it's very similar to the H1B, but you just have no lottery basically, because there's always almost going to be a visa available. So that's a great option for those who are from, again, Chile or Singapore. The other alternative to explore is the J1 Research Scholar programs. So these are really great. A lot of people don't realize that they actually could use this instead of an H1B if they have an employer that's willing to help draft the right job description to fit for the J1 Research Scholar. But for the J1 Specialist program, this is basically for individuals with specialized knowledge or skills. It's max at 1 year, but it can garner more experience by exiting and returning. You can focus on training, knowledge, and cultural professional exchange. Sounds super vague because it is. Basically, you can categorize a lot of things as cultural and professional exchange. You have the right sponsor. There's a lot of flexibility here. Again, it is maxed out in 1 year, so it's not an amazing option, which leads me to the J1 Research Scholar program, which is for 5 years. Researchers or professionals can be for private companies. The thing is that really you can categorize a lot of jobs as researchers. So even as a lawyer, I've categorized J1s as attorneys. I've categorized as researchers. I've categorized engineers that way. You just have to have an employer who's willing to sign off on a job description that will help, of course, sincerely, has to be honest, but that can fit into the research language that USCIS is obligated to fit against. And really in a lot of our jobs, we're doing research every day. So you have to make that argument to your employer, and hopefully they'll be flexible, but it is for 5 years. One of the great things about the J1 research program is that the spouses can work. A lot of the visas that I've listed previously, I actually think all of them, the spouses can't work. Yeah, the H1B, your spouse can't work unless you have an approved I-140. TN can't work. O-1, spouse can't work. So this is one of the few. Your spouse can work under the J1 research scholar program. So it's definitely really important to, consider if you do have someone that you want to have a double income household and they don't have their own visa options.
And
For both, oh, go ahead.
sorry, for J1 research scholar program, is that something an individual can do it by self-sponsoring, or their employer and their employer's attorney have to do this?
You have to have a sponsor, yeah.
Okay. But can it be a self-sponsored, or the employer, just like H1B, is it something that the employer's attorney have to do it?
So technically H1B, you can have your own attorney work on an H1B with you. I'm not 100% sure I'm understanding. So
So, for
you do need to have
example,
an employer for
okay.
sure, but
So,
technically the employer could be hired, the attorney can be hired through the foreign national or the work.
so for O1, the individual can come and work with Manifest Law to build their profile, something like that. Can they do something like that for J1, or it has to be only through the employer and the support of the employer?
The employer has to support the
Okay.
J1 regardless, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mhm. So this is kind of a summary of what we talked about and adding in a few extras. Again, TN in regards to other alternatives. So the country-specific visas or special visas. So again, TN for Canadians and Mexicans, E3 for Australians, H1B1 for Singaporeans and Chileans, the J1 that we talked about. And lastly, I want to talk to you really quickly, and I know it's out of order, is the E1 or E2, which are really, really great. It is a visa that is typically for someone coming from a treaty country. So if you're wondering, is my country a treaty country? Google it. Just type I'm Nigerian. Is that an E2 treaty country? I am Singaporean. Is that an E2 or E1 treaty country? And you can find out. It'll appear right away on Google. But these are really great visas for individuals who are entrepreneurs. But frankly, you got to have some money because they do require an operating business. You have to have substantial trade with the U.S., or you already have substantial amount of investment into your U.S. enterprise. But that is a great visa option if you're like, I'm sick of working for someone else. I want to be my own boss. Look up if you're from a treaty country. It's a great category to really pursue. So to summarize what happened this year, basically USCIS will be announcing the cap will be reached, most likely not going to have any second round of lottery selections. We're seeing a much higher trend for scrutiny and RFEs under the Trump administration, just like we did the first time he was president. Cap subject H-1Bs are now off the table until next year. So what does this mean for you? If you're on OPT STEM, OPT is ending, you're going to need to quickly seek alternatives. If you were picked and you filed before June 30th, you will be holding your place, but you need to remember you have to have legal status maintained until your start date in October. So if you were picked in the H-1B lottery and your OPT is expiring tomorrow, you're not allowed to be here until October. You got to figure out some sort of visa to bridge you. And that could be perhaps a B, tourist visa, or it could be maybe, one of the other work alternatives, which doesn't really make sense in the meanwhile, or you probably might need to leave the country. But talk to your DSO, see if there's any opportunities for extensions, if you've captured all the time, and making sure your I-20 is accurate. If you weren't selected and your case is denied, obviously you need a new strategy. Time is very critical. So the longer you're planning on building towards your visa, especially like an O-1, it's really going to lend itself to a more positive outcome. So we have a QR code here. You can also email help@manifestlaw.com. To get started, we have a code for Happy Schools for $500 off our services. So be sure to let our intake team know when you get your quote, like, hey, can I have this adjusted for the Happy Schools discount? And again, it'll be $500 off. Feel free to scan the QR code. And if you want to have a consult with me specifically, again, my name's Zahina. So let help at Manifest Law know when after they assess your questionnaire and put you on my calendar. So,
All right. Fantastic.
Q&A.
Let's do Q&A. So we have a bunch of questions that has been posted. Let's start with for one of the O1 criteria, a question from Gaurav. IEEE or ACM or paid memberships, and anyone can get it. Would that still count?
So just because something is paid doesn't necessarily disqualify it. But if anyone can get it, then absolutely not, won't work. But there are different tiers in the IEEE fellowship, for example, that do qualify. So IEEE fellowship does qualify. IEEE senior member, not so much anymore. It used to work, but having just a regular entry-level membership, unfortunately, that won't count.
Okay. And there are a bunch of questions about day one CPT. I will hold on to that for a second. Question is it possible to start on a day one CPT program with pending or approved EB to NIW based on I-140? Do you offer any services regarding EB to NIW?
So do we have other service for EB to NIW to bridge the CPT, or I didn't really understand?
So I think the person is currently on day one CPT and
Okay.
they're exploring EB to NIW.
Okay.
And
You're
does
wondering,
Manifest Law offer any services? Just like O1, would you explore possibilities to help them file, I think, EB to NIW? I believe that's the meaning of the question.
so for the NIW, sorry, I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. So for the NIW, it's not a path to a green card. It is a path to a green card, but it's not legal status. So even if I got your NIW approved today, pending on your country of birth, you might not be holding a green card for several years. So don't think of the NIW as an alternative to a visa. You still, after your CPT is done, you still need to think of an O1 or try to get an H1B lottery. The NIW, for some people, for example, if you're born in India, you may not see a green card for decades. And some experts even think ever if the visa bulletin continues to move on the trends that it is. So again, it's a great path to a green card for some people born in some countries, but it's not a visa. It's not going to allow you to stay in the US even with the approval. You really still need to think of something else.
Okay. All right. And another good question. You mentioned PR firms few times. Could you give some examples?
Global Talent PR, let me pull up their link and I can put in the chat.
Sure.
But they are my favorite PR company. So 1 second. As for Laura, if you are more in the creative field, as for Kristen, if you have a more tech background, are you guys able to see that link?
Yep, link is visible.
So great. Yeah. As for Laura for creative, Kristen for tech, they're really amazing. And they again focus on organic press. I think it's a great place to explore.
Okay. Second question. If we do CPT, would that hurt future I-765 or green card applications?
If you do CPT, does it hurt your future?
Yeah, so I think it's if you do day one CPT after OPT ran out, what's the implications of that in future 765 or green card application?
So 765 is just the work authorization. I don't really see how CPT could affect that. And I'm trying to think if there's a reason why you would ask that, but I can't see that actually having any effect there. In regards to future green card applications, no, unless you are out of compliance. So like if you did CPT and you actually were insincere with the employer, you didn't actually show up at work, or you got fired and you didn't tell your DSO, like of course that could hurt, but normally if you're doing everything right, I don't see any reason.
Okay.
I just want to apologize. We had an error on the last slide, so I had to just stop sharing, but I'm going to reshare it again, and then we have it fixed now. So it's been fixed.
Okay, all right, fantastic. Are there any criterias for selecting a good day one CPT program?
I mean, I would say, you would want to be mindful of the communication with the DSO. So, making sure that it actually lines up with your degree. I mean, making sure the employer is actually in compliance with the actual program too. So I've seen it where people have enrolled with employer that for whatever reason shouldn't have been approved for CPT. Perhaps the job description actually line up with the work. So always communicate with your DSO. Like, is this the right employer? Is this the right fit? If it doesn't smell right, investigate. Because I've seen that happen a handful of times.
Okay. For people who are from countries with executive hold, is O-1 visa exempted from the hold? Would a citizen from these countries will still be able to apply for O-1?
Sorry, what hold? What kind of hold?
I think probably the ban.
It depends. So right now you probably are fine. Well, what can I ask what country you're from?
So let's wait for that answer to come. In meantime, if I do a day one CPT and my F1 change of status to H4 and H4 EAD is already applied, will there be any issues with my change of status application?
If you're going from F1 to H4, would you have any issues with your work authorization
Change
for?
of with the change of status application
Mhm.
if I am on day one CPT program.
I don't see why, as long as your I-20 is active and you're not breaking any rules, you shouldn't have any issues.
Okay, all right. If someone starts a day one CPT program, then
Mhm.
switches to H1B when the H1B is approved, but they decided to drop the program, not complete their degree, will that impact them in future?
Yes. Yeah, your H-1B will typically require your bachelor's degree as a minimum requirement. If you have an equivalency or an alternative degree from abroad and you have that, like I said, equivalency or your work experience equivalency, then that might work. But do be mindful that that's typically the main requirement of H-1B is having at least a bachelor's degree, and that the job that you're applying for requires a minimum of a bachelor's degree.
Let me rephrase the question.
Okay.
Sure. So I'm assuming the person already has a master's degree, ran out of OPT, and they started day one CPT, say an MBA or something
Okay, oh, so this is for someone who's in graduate school.
in graduate school.
I see. Okay.
While they are on day one CPT, they got selected in the lottery. So let's say the person is in first year of day one CPT, they got picked in the lottery this year, 2027 fiscal year. As soon as they get their H1B, can they drop out of the program?
I mean, if your H-1B is active and your H-1B is actually starting, so like you're at the October start date, then sure, that's fine. But you want to bridge that time, so stay in your CPT and your school program until then. Sorry, I didn't really follow the question. I
No
apologize.
problem. Sounds good. All right. Awesome. Let's see. For the O1 visa, I saw you mentioned one possible path is through working with professors. Could you please elaborate on how that works?
Yeah, so I think working with professors is probably one of the best paths for O1 because O1s are definitely biased towards academics. So people who have a lot of peer review, good publications, good citation ratings, and the way you get that is through good relationships with your universities and your professors. And there's no professor out there typically that couldn't qualify for their own O1. So those are the kind of resumes you want to be emulating.
Okay. For cap-exempt organizations, if they offer H1B for a part-time job, can you continue to work for-profit organization at the same time for the remaining time? Is it there a limit on how many hours can you work?
So sorry, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. I apologize. Some of these questions are a little bit
Sure. So
confusing.
the person got a cap-exempt H1B,
Mhm,
but it's a part-time employment.
mhm.
Can they do work a, for a profit employer?
No, because your cap exempt is limited to cap exempt organization unless you have been selected in the lottery.
But on the slides, you mentioned about working concurrently.
So that's if you're working towards the lottery choosing. Sorry, I thought I clarified during the presentation, but that's to buy time to get the lottery for a for-profit employer.
Okay, so if somebody has a cap-exempt H-1B approved and they're working for it, will they be eligible to work concurrently for a cap-based employer without being picked in the lottery?
No. So that the way the slides were meant to allude was that it would allow you to get the time to work towards a employer that requires a lottery.
Okay, all right. For cap-exempt H-1B, you mentioned the pathway through universities. Could you explain what kind of roles at the universities will qualify for cap-exempt H-1B?
It's really any job that is what could be considered a specialty occupation. So that's an occupation where a bachelor's degree is a minimum requirement. So like obviously someone in the kitchen or the cleaning staff wouldn't be considered a specialty occupation, but perhaps someone in the administrative office or someone who's a college counselor, obviously professors, all of those are jobs that typically require at least a bachelor's degree. And that's when you can make the argument for the H-1B specialty occupation.
Okay, okay. Does manifest law help with NOID and RFEs that people are getting on change of status from
We
H
do. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
from H1 to B2 to H1 again after somebody got laid off? And currently, counselors are getting pushed for 100K fee.
We do help with those. We'd want to see the actual notice before obviously telling you what our strategy would be. But yeah, from what you're telling me, it sounds like a really common NOID and RFE that we're getting, that the H1B 100K fees being triggered by the change of status. But we're happy to review it if you want to submit it over to, again, that email on the screen.
Okay. The previous person says that the person is from Nigeria, which is on partial ban list of 39 countries. Would O1 adjustment of status be possible?
So you can't do an adjustment of status to a green card. Nigerians, though, can apply for O1 still. So, but if you were to get an EB-1A for a green card, I would not unfortunately be able to get you a green card today. Your case would be held in lieu. So I have a bunch of Nigerians actually right now where they're just in the like gray area of being in pending status towards a green card. But you can do an O1 is not a green card. It's not a path to an immediate path to a green card. It builds the foundation for a green card application later, but it's not a path to a green card in itself. So you can still apply for that, fortunately.
Okay, all right. I think the previous person about change of status and F1 clarified their position. Currently on STEM OPT, which is going to end this June, planning to change the status from STEM OPT, which is F1, to H4 and apply for H4 EAD. In the transition, there will be a gap in employment. Can the person go to a day one CPT in between in order to avoid that gap in employment? So that was their question.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
All right. Monica, you might want to reach out to Manifest in order to clarify if in case you have any further questions on that process. A lot of day one CPT questions. Can we travel while on day one CPT?
If you have a sticker in your passport, yes, you can travel while on day one CPT, but that's up to the sticker that's ultimately on your passport, your I-20, a conversation with your DSO. So make sure that all of that's cleared first.
Okay. After Doctor of Physical Therapy, can I do a master's program in health administration with day one CPT? Ran out of attempt with lottery. Will that be an issue?
It should work, but again, you're going to want to check with your DSO to see if you qualify. A lot of these things are very nuanced on their programs, and the DSO is in the best position to determine that because they're the ones that ultimately are. They're agents of the government.
Uh, so there is a question from Tong. Tong, I don't think attorney mentioned anything about the STEM OPT may be ending. I don't think that is something that we covered today, or is there any news going around, anything like that, attorney?
Like the STEM OPT is not going to exist anymore. Is that
Yeah, yeah.
no, I don't know anything about that. There's a lot of really scary things out there that people make up all the time for clickbait and for views. So that one I will say is probably one of those. But if we do hear anything, of course we'll let you guys know. But I haven't heard that as
Okay.
of yet.
I think that's a very good question. You have given several options: O1, Cap-Exempt, H1B, Day 1 CPT, J1, and whatnot. How would you rank these options in terms of importance, feasibility slash safety?
So frankly, it's really person to person. Some people, they have two kids, they have a full-time job, or they have like a sick family, or they don't have the time to portfolio build to an O1. It's very easy for me to tell people that you can just get scholarly articles, you could do judgeships and peer reviews and build towards an O1. But I've met a lot of people who are like, it's just not feasible for me, right? And if that's the case, then we'll push them to a J1 researcher position, but then keeping in mind that you're limited there. That's 5 years and you can't renew it after that. And if you maybe that will give you more time to build towards an O1. So it is person to person. I do think the O1 is probably the best in terms of the fact that it's available to everyone. It is not a country specific visa, and it's renewable forever. But again, it's easy for me to say that, as an attorney, I'm not the one actually doing the hard work to portfolio build. It's not truly, something you could just do overnight. It's a part-time job to commit to getting an O1.
Okay. Is there any plans from USCIS to offer premium processing for EAD through EB to NIW?
So for EB2 NIW, there is no such thing as an EAD attached to that. If you get approved for the NIW and apply for an AOS after, assuming your visa bulletin, the visa bulletin is current for your country of birth, then for everyone under adjustment of status, NIW, EB1A, EB2 perm, while you're adjusting status, you are eligible for an EAD.
Okay.
There is no language so far, I wish, for expediting EADs. It's really slow. Most of my clients get their green cards before they get their work permits right now.
Okay. All right. Is Cap-Exempt H1B possible for 20 to 25 hours per week of employment?
Yes, yeah, you could definitely do part-time for 20 to what? I'm sorry, 23 hours, is that what you
20
said?
to 25 hours.
Yeah, you can do H1B for part-time work.
Okay. All right. I think the other questions were repeated. So those are the questions that we had. So before we wrap up, is there anything else people who are dealing with not getting selected in the lottery have to be aware of in order to maintain their status?
Uh, Sorry, what else people need to be aware of in
So
order to maintain their
for
status?
some of them, they might be running out of their time on STEM OPT and OPT.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke about different options, but what should they be doing so that they're not running into trouble by
I
going
mean,
out of status?
it's kind of what the whole presentation is. So like finding one of those other visa categories, there's really not, unfortunately, the US is not really forgiving. Like we don't have a lot of other options. Hopefully fitting to one of these visa categories that we discussed today, or potentially exploring buying a little bit of time to transition to a B visa. So for tourists, but that I will not just say as like broad stroke advice. That is very much contingent person to person, because it could compromise potentially coming back in on a B visa in the future. So don't just think of that as a broad stroke piece of advice. I caution you and have a consultation with an attorney if that's you. Everyone is different. If you have the opportunity to extend your OPT, maybe you qualify for STEM OPT, maybe you can get into another F1 program. But yeah, everyone's case is different for sure. So I am hesitant to say there's one fix for that. But hopefully maybe you can fit into one of the visa categories we discussed today, ideally.
Okay, all right. So one last question. If somebody is doing Cap-Exempt H-1B, will the 100K fee apply for them?
Yes. Oh, sorry, for cap exempt. So as of right, no, there's no fee for that.
Okay, all right, got it. All right.
Actually, wait, I'm sorry. I think there actually is still. Hold on, I'm trying to remember the last case because I think the one I'm thinking of is a renewal. So actually, I think there is still a fee. I'm sorry, I'm thinking about because my all the cap exempt cases I filed this year were renewals. Let me just double check.
Okay. And while uh, attorney is getting answers for you all, I am posting the link to do the quiz with manifest so that you can check your eligibility for O1 and followed by free complimentary consultation so that you can figure out if there is any possibility that you may qualify for O1.
Okay, so actually, I apologize. So it is still applicable, but not if the employee is already inside the United States.
Okay, so if somebody is on F1 applying for Cap-Exempt H-1B, changing status to Cap-Exempt H-1B, they will not have to pay the fees.
Correct, correct. Sorry, yeah, I'm gonna clarify. I couldn't remember what exactly my
Okay,
cases had, but yes.
fantastic. All right, sounds good. Thank you, everyone. Attorney Lahaina, thank you for spending your evening with us and appreciate your time. And I hope you should be able to talk to some of the attendees from here in next few days or coming weeks.
Thanks so much. Take care, everybody, and thanks for spending the evening with us.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone. Bye bye.